changing landscape of the telematics insurance ecosystem. And we're going to try to answer the question, what does it mean for you? And obviously, that's going to vary based on your perspective. So in light of that, I'm a little bit curious to know more about the audience. By show of hands, how many people work in the auto OEM space ecosystem? Just curious. Okay, great. And how many folks work in the insurance space? Okay, almost sort of evenly divided, so that's good. That's good. We've got a good mix. So I guess one thing, in order to sort of evaluate, where we are today and where we're going and what this means for you, it's probably good to think about where we came from. So if you go back in time, go back, let's say, 100 years or so, to the early 1900s when the automobile was becoming popular and people were adopting it. At the same time, there was sort of this coincident creation of automobile insurance. And it turns out, and you probably don't realize this, but 100 years ago, insurance companies were getting together. They were creating and developing this new product called automobile insurance. And one of the questions that they ask themselves is, what are the things that contribute to risk? I mean, with this newfangled automobile, what are the things that actually are indicative of collisions, accidents, the future loss? And believe it or not, even 100 years ago, insurance companies recognized that driving behavior was a significant factor and maybe even the predominant factor in determining the risk of future loss. And that was 100 years ago. But when you think about where we started with the automobile technology, the ability to measure driving behavior on a day-to-day basis really didn't exist. So insurance companies settled for stand-ins, what we would call proxies, things like age, sex, marital status. And over the years, the insurance industry has developed a number of innovations to utilize for the estimation of risk, including things like credit history. So over time, insurance companies, in the absence of having better data, have used these proxies. Well, today, we have this convergence of multiple industries. We really have this, and I think it's a very exciting convergence of both the automotive industry and the insurance industry. So what we're going to do is talk about today in this presentation the convergence of those industries, some of the challenges they face, how to bridge the gap, and then look at some of the growth opportunities. So usage-based insurance, a convergence of multiple industries. This summary slide, I think, sums it up. It really makes the points very, very forcefully. Today, insurance companies use proxies in order to estimate risk, and the proxies work. They're reasonable. But it turns out that driving behavior works even better. And what we found in our preliminary results is that safer drivers are actually overpriced based on traditional rating variables. Age, sex, marital status, they work, they're reasonable proxies, but driving data actually works even better. We also know that insurance companies who offer UBI programs are much more likely to be able to attract safe drivers. And we also know, and regulators like this, because Verisk Insurance Solutions deals with the various regulatory authorities that govern insurance in the United States, we know that regulators like the idea of consumers being empowered with their driving data. So the measurement of driving data allows consumers to be priced potentially more fairly, more transparently, and it also gives them control. It gives them the possibility for improvement. We also know that customer retention with insurers who offer UBI programs is much higher. So where does UBI stand today? Well, it's today, and estimates vary. I mean, there's no large consensus on just how much market penetration there is in the United States and globally. I mean, there are a bunch of different estimates, but it's a significant portion of the existing fleet today that auto insurers cover with their policies. But I think the big takeaway is, as connected cars become more prevalent in the fleet, the opportunity for usage-based insurance and telematics-based pricing is going to expand. And it's going to expand significantly. And I think this chart, while there are some assumptions made here about the growth rates, both in the EU and in North America, the story that this slide tells is that UBI and telematics are set to take off. Because of the development of the technology, and in particular, the development of the embedded technology and its connection to the internet and to networks, the inflection point, I think, has been reached, and I think this graph shows it very nicely. So what are the industries that are converging? Well, certainly auto insurance and certainly the automakers. I mean, for decades, for generations, insurance companies and automakers have had mutual customers, right? They share many of the same customers. But there's also risk analytics and Internet of Things providers. Those are all coming together as well. And I think in the years that I've been involved in the telematics space, it's been exciting. I mean, just to see all the developments and going from these conferences, one year to the next, it's impressive to see how many new solutions get rolled out and how much the technology continuously advances. So one thing that I think is an important takeaway, it may be something that the OEMs know better than insurers, but I think everybody is coming to recognize this, is at some point in the next few years, the vast majority of automobiles manufactured, shipped, and sold are going to be connected automobiles. And in fact, by one estimate, by 2020, roughly 97%, I mean, virtually the entire cohort of cars being sold are going to be connected cars. So the ability to measure driving behavior is going to increase at the same rate. One of the issues that we've found, and I've been in a position where I've dealt with many insurers. My background is insurance, and now I've had the opportunity to work with many of the OEMs and many of the entities in the OEM ecosystem, is the many-to-many problem. So you've got all these sensors out in the field collecting data, and you've got all of these connections, the ability to collect all of this sensor-type data. But what you also have is a many-to-many problem. You have so many entities using so many different devices and so many different channels collecting the information. And then on the other side, you've got so many different entities wishing to utilize that information. The integration of these two sides, the data collectors and the data consumers, and by consumers I mean entities, businesses like insurance companies, the problems there are really quite significant. So it's something that has to be considered. It is a big problem that needs to be solved. So let's take a look at some of the challenges that OEMs, the data collectors, the OEMs, the TSPs, the telecoms face in collecting telematics data. So first of all, number one is understanding the insurance industry. I'm sort of in a privileged position in that I now get to see the activities and the concerns and the questions that take place in the auto space and also in the insurance space. And what I do see is that both the OEMs and the insurers are learning each other's industry. Each has its own set of core competencies. Car makers make cars. They don't necessarily understand all of the things that go into insurance. So that's one hurdle, that the OEMs and the data collectors have to get past. The other hurdle is scalability, and this is something that seems mundane, but it's really not trivial. So scalability, when you think about, and this goes back to the many-to-many problem, when you think about a position as let's say a data collector, if you're an OEM and you're collecting data and you want to make it available for the benefit of your customers throughout the insurance industry, you've got to deal with 300 different entities in the United States alone. And just the logistics of dealing with legal, regulatory, infrastructure, data security, these are huge. For OEMs to work directly with insurance companies, essentially they have to reinvent the wheel each and every time they engage with a new insurer. So scalability is truly, truly a problem. And then the other problem that data collectors, OEMs, TSPs, telecoms face is what data do insurers want to use and how much? And when you think about what the sensors are capable of collecting, the numbers get huge very, very quickly. And at this point, insurers have some idea of the data they'd like to use, but they're also in the position where they're exploring. They're trying to find out which variables, some of them they've identified, others they haven't, and so they're trying to figure out how much data do they need, what data do they need. So this is a challenge as well. And the idea that each and every collector of data, OEM or TSP or telecom, is going to work individually to help solve these problems is, I think, impractical. So from the auto insurer side, what are some of the challenges that they face? Well, number one is data. Insurance companies use a lot of data. And in fact, I like to say that, that they are some of the earliest big data consumers. I mean, they've been all about data and statistics and data science for their entire history. I mean, it's all based on data science. But the data collected by connected devices, whether it's cars, connected homes, Internet of Things, the data is categorically different from anything that they've dealt with previously in the insurance space. It now involves things like, acceleration in 3 dimensions and vector analysis. I mean, this isn't the sort of thing that insurance companies have dealt with in the past. So it's a new set of skills that they have to develop in order to just work with the data and make sense of it. The other challenge that they face is technology. I mean, the collection of this data, whether it's from aftermarket parts, whether it's from telecoms, whether it's from embedded devices in the cars, the technology involved, the engineering, and the variance from one platform to another poses huge challenges. And then in the aftermarket space, if they're using dongles or smartphones, there's the whole logistics problem. You've got to get policyholders to volunteer to participate, and then you've got to get them to take action. They've got to install a dongle, they've got to download a smartphone app. So this is very problematic from an insurance company perspective. And then there's the logistics involved. And this pertains more so to the dongles, the aftermarket solutions, and the smartphone solutions. Insurance companies really aren't in the logistics business per se. I mean, distributing software and supporting customers and distributing hardware, this isn't the sort of thing, this isn't in their core set of skills. This is something that's very different from what they've traditionally done. So these are really significant hurdles, and I think in a lot of ways, they've definitely held back. The technology, in some ways, has advanced faster than insurers' ability to deal with the technology and the data that can come out of it. So how do you bridge the gap? So I guess the short answer is Verisk took on the job of launching a telematics data exchange. And so what we do and what we have done, and we've been doing this in the insurance space for nearly 4 decades now, is to collect data on behalf of the insurance industry. And we have multiple platforms that do this already. Like I say, we've been doing this for 4 decades. So now we've taken on the mission of collecting connected data from cars, from Internet of Things providers, including homes and commercial properties, and from TSPs and telecoms. So we've taken on this mission now of collecting data from all of the different parties that are out there who have this data, normalizing it, cleansing it, and bringing to bear the normalized data and the analytics necessary for the insurance companies to consume it. And in fact, we're very happy to announce, and we've had public announcements to this effect, We've built the exchange. We're collecting data from our first OEM partner, General Motors. We have an exclusive with General Motors in the United States. And we're expecting to launch the exchange in September of this year. So it's exciting times for us, and it's also very exciting times for the automakers and for the insurance industry. So what are the benefits? What are some of the benefits? Well, obviously, the benefits to the entities that collect the data is that Verisk is plugged in, and the Verisk Telematics Data Exchange is plugged in to the insurance industry, and more broadly, the insurance ecosystem. Between our rates, rules, forms, platforms, claims solutions, we're deeply embedded in almost every part of the value chain for the insurance industry. So the Verisk Telematics Data Exchange allows collectors of the data a single point of entry into the entire insurance ecosystem. And then, of course, benefits to insurers. Well, one obvious benefit is they get access to data that before, in the world of aftermarket dongles and smartphones, was very difficult to collect. With embedded devices, they now have the opportunity to get access to data, and most importantly, access at the point of sale. So in a UBI program, in most UBI programs today, if an applicant for insurance goes to an insurance company and says, I'd like a quote for a policy, and I'd also like to participate in your UBI program, the insurance company will issue a policy and then collect the data going forward. And at some point in the future, be it 30, 60, 90 days, the insurance company will determine whether or not that policyholder qualifies for a discount, and if so, how much. With the exchange, consumers will have portable data, and insurers will get access to this at the point of sale. So from the consumer side, I think the benefits are really fantastic. First of all, they have portable data. They're not locked in to a particular insurer's UBI program. Today, if you participate in an insurance company's UBI program and you want to change insurers, you've got to start all over again. With the Verisk Telematics Data Exchange, the consumer's data is portable, and it's also under the consumer's control. The consumer gets to decide whether or not that information is shared with the insurer. And obviously, this gives the consumer transparency, it gives them control, but it also gives them the opportunity to get feedback, to improve their driving, and by improving their driving, to help manage the cost of ownership of their car, because insurance premiums are a very significant portion of the expense of car ownership. Now, of course, cars are just one part of the connected universe. The Telematics Data Exchange is being built as an IoT platform. So we're expecting insurers will want to get access to all kinds of data, from car to homes to security companies, manufacturers, even smart cities. I mean, there seems to be no limit to the amount of data that can be collected, and there seems to be no limit to the many different ways that it can be used, even in the insurance space. So anyway, thank you for your time. I hope you found this informative, and if there are a handful of questions or whatever, I'd be glad to answer them. Any questions?
Okay, so we've got time for one very quick question. You can see the questions down there. Shall we go for the top one? Will the advent of autonomous cars make insurance obsolete if OEMs use the connected car data and telematic service providers, and they use telematic service providers for analytical purposes?
Sure. Well, I guess I'll start with the top one, because I suppose that's the biggie. In fact, we were just talking about that at lunch. I mean, what impact will autonomous cars have on the insurance industry? And I think the answer is, without making specific predictions, it will probably be transformative. I mean, when cars truly become autonomous, and obviously one of the benefits of that full autonomy is fewer or perhaps almost no accidents, that will be transformative, no doubt about it. So I think it's really more a question of timing. There are these steps on the ladder that OEMs are climbing to get to different levels of autonomy, but at full autonomy, that's very transformative. I think it's transformative for the automakers, for society, and for insurance companies, obviously.
Thank you very much once again.